I am Michaela L. Carson, and this is Talk About It Tuesday, but it is a Friday because of the hurricane we had rescheduled. So let's talk about it Friday today. And we are on with Sharon Hughson, who is an author and a story coach. I've known her for a couple of years now. She was my writing coach when I was finishing my first book. She was on Talk About It Tuesday, one of my first guests a year ago, and we talked about fiction and nonfiction and some of the, different ways that we write with those different genres. And I'm really excited to have her on again today as we talk about the pros, cons, and pitfalls of different publishing paths. So, Sharon, would you like to say hello and tell people a little bit about you?
Hello, yes. I'm multi-published author, both indie and small press, so traditional and self-publishing. So I do have experience with that. I've also am a teacher of writing courses. My Hope Writer certification as a coach with them has also led to me teaching different classes on the business of publishing or fiction writing. So do have experience with that. I have a YouTube channel that I am not active with, but it has a lot of content. So if you're looking for some help with story, you can just check that out. You might find it. I talked about a lot of things there.
And I'll share that link with everybody in the comments later. Once we post this on the replay, I'll make sure we share that link for your YouTube channel and anything else you want to share with us. I actually have done, so I dabble in fiction. I haven't written fiction for publishing yet, but I actually had Sharon do a chapter critique. Highly recommend her if you're a fiction writer. She's got some great insights and she'll lovingly ask the hard questions. So it was a very positive experience working with her on that and getting her feedback, but also knowing that she didn't tell me I sucked. So that was a win.
You did not.
It's always the fear, right? You're going to show someone for an editor or some kind of critique, and then you're like, wow, this is really bad. You should never write again. So that wasn't my experience. It was great. Okay, so really quick before we jump in, I want to talk through, we're going to focus on three types of publishing. There's sort of four, but I want to differentiate that. So there's traditional publishing, which the short answer that you'll hear on most social media groups and whatnot is that traditional publishing doesn't cost you anything. It's the easiest way to know if it's really a traditional publisher. Um, it's the short answer. There's a lot more to it than that. And we'll talk about some of those things today. But then there's hybrid and vanity publishing, which a lot of people treat the same way. We're not going to talk about vanity publishing because I haven't done that. Vanity publishing is when you pay someone to publish your book for you. Hybrid publishing is similar to that, and there's a lot of confusion. But the determination I came to after my research when I was looking to publish was that hybrid publishing was under the covering of a reputable publisher. To me, true hybrid publishing is we're an arm of this traditional publisher. Now, with small boutique publishers, that can still be hybrid, sort of. But my experience was with Westbow Press, which is under the Thomas Nelson Zondervan covering. If you look at my book, I have Thomas Nelson Zondervan on my imprint. So to me, that is the difference that I came to when I was looking at research and figuring out what I wanted to do. Yes, I still paid them to publish my book. So we're going to talk about that. And then there's self-publishing, which is in short, where you do all the work yourself. Okay, Sharon, you mentioned at the beginning, you have experience with which ones?
Traditional with small press. So a small press generally is a press that you can, well, they're obviously not one of the big three, but you can submit to them without an agent.
Okay.
All the major publishers, you have to have an agent. They don't take unsolicited manuscripts. Although a lot of them have now created arms in which you can submit without an agent, and the requirements there are a little bit different. So what comes to me is like Love Inspired, which is an arm from Harlequin, which is an arm from Random House. Is that who they're under?
I think
Anyway,
so.
so, and that has kind of a little bit different requirements, but you can submit there without an agent.
Okay.
So small press, and what I mean by small press is they pay royalties only, they don't pay a advance. So that's the difference usually between a small press and a large press is
Okay.
there's no advances. Okay.
Well, and I want to talk about too, because actually the first thing on our list for today was talking about the costs, because
Yes.
we tend to think that, there's no costs with traditional, which is somewhat true. I mean, you don't have to pay anything, but when you're when you're publishing a book, there's always a marketing aspect, and how much you spend on marketing is really up to you, regardless of which path you take. You can always pay for paid ads on Amazon and Facebook and Google and things like that. If you want to invest money in that, that's up to you. So let's talk about that. Like I said earlier, I think the easiest one for self-publishing is there are no costs, and we'll talk about royalties in a minute, but with the traditional publishing, whether you do one of the big publishers through an agent or you do a small press, there is no upfront cost to you. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So with hybrid, they usually offer packages, and the packages depend on what your cost is. So if you want a marketing package, that's going to cost you this much. If you want them to edit your book, it's going to cost you this much. If you want, so it's really hard to give like a specific dollar amount for hybrid, because it really depends on which services you're contracting with them to do. But my mindset is this, and this is when I work with some authors, it's like, why are you writing your book? Because I think that's important. If you're actually trying to make money on your books, hybrid will never be the right option. I'm just gonna be really candid and say it. You're not going to make back the money you invest on the book with the royalties. And we'll talk about royalties in a minute, like I said, but the investment is usually significant. So if you're looking to actually earn money as a writer, hybrid's probably not the right choice for you. What about self-publishing?
So self-publishing is, I mean, there's a whole wide end. I mean, I know 6 and 7 figure authors who have a staff. I mean, basically, they have the same editor they use. They have 2 or 3 cover designers they always use, proofers, the 9 yards. They've got it. So when they write, they send it down the line just like you would a traditional publisher, or a traditional publisher would on your behalf, because all you're responsible for is submitting it on your deadline to your editor. And then your editor does their work, ships it back, And so with the indie publisher or indie author who's big, they know the importance of making sure they have all those same steps that a big publisher would take to make sure they turn out the best quality. Now, if you're small, like me, then you're scrambling to try and find a cover designer. You're scrambling to try and find a good editor that you can afford. That's not going to put you in debt for a while, because editing can cost a lot of money, especially since a traditional publisher will give you 3 rounds of editing. If you're going to pay for that, that's a lot of money that you're paying out for editing. And then, if you don't know how to format, how to do that, and then let's not even talk about marketing. What's all the marketing stuff? Even if you aren't going to play ads or whatever, you're still going to want to order some marketing materials like bookmarks, and then you also have to have all of the social media, stuff that you're going to post.
Now, obviously with self-publishing, your costs are going to depend on your own gifts and your skills.
Yes.
I have a background in communication, so social media is a no-brainer for me to do myself. If you're scared of your computer, social media is not going to be a no-brainer for you, and it's going to cause you all the angst that you can imagine. So be mindful of that when you're thinking about, and I do have a budgeting checklist for self-publishing that I'll drop in. It's in the guides if you're part of the collective. If not, though, it is available as a free resources to you as well, to kind of help you build out where you want to invest your money as a self-publishing author. I will say, and I'm curious to know what Sharon says, I think the 3 things you have to pay for or budget for to some extent: professional editing, to me, that's a non-negotiable. Unless you're just writing a book for your family and friends. But if you're actually writing to be a published author and to like have that sense of professionalism, you have to pay for professional editing, cover design. And then I think the third one differs depending on your skill set, but for most first-time writers, it's the formatting, getting it formatted for ebook and all of that, because it's not as easy. Yes, you can learn it. If you want to learn it, go for it. But it can be very challenging for a lot of people who aren't comfortable with technology. So those would be the 3 I would say that are probably the most important. What would you say are the 3 most important things to?
I would agree. I think that is true. And I think for nonfiction, the formatting is even more essential than for fiction. So, because like with KDP, if you're going to publish on Amazon, Kindle Direct Publishing is their publishing company. They have everything you would need. So they give you just a bunch of templates that you then download, and you just work in those. And those are set up with their guidelines in mind. And so when you upload that, then it works to wrap into their stuff. And they have what is called a Kindle Create that you then use to create your print books.
Okay.
So because your print and ebook, always the formatting is different for those two things. So
So did you use the Kindle Create when you self-published, or did you go with did you hire someone?
okay, so my first book, yes, it was a nightmare. So once I got contracts and I was also traditionally published, then I ran into some other indie authors who had skills. And one of them, actually two of them, but one of them for sure had Kindle or had Vellum. This is a program
Okay.
that works on Apple. It's an Apple based or whatever, Microsoft based, not a Windows based program that is used for book formatting. And it will format in any output format that you want. So
Okay.
is my understanding. And she would format my books for $50 and hand me the files for print and for ebook. And at that time it was Kindle because they had their Mobi files as well as the EPUB. So
Right.
she would send me 3 different files that she formatted with that. So that was one thing I was going to say for indie publishing. If you connect widely with a lot of indie authors, you will find indie authors who do have a wide skill base like that. And they're eager to either trade with you if you also have a skill, or to offer you a discounted rate because they understand what it's like to need that work and not have the money. So
That's a great point. And I think when you're looking at cost, I talk about this too. Don't be afraid to talk to somebody about bartering services. If you're a solid editor, if you've got a background in English and stuff, maybe you edit or do a preliminary edit for them and they do your formatting, or, so it's important. Those communities, those writing communities are really important. Whether it's in person or virtual, you can really make some strong connections there. I've done a lot of bartering the last 2 years with the release of my first book and other things. And it's been a blessing. It has, because it's biblical. It's all of us, it's the body working together, right? Like the arm is doing this part and I'm on the foot over here doing that part, and we're all helping each other. So I think sometimes our pride gets in the way a little bit when it comes to asking for help, but the reality is it's how God designed us to function in community. And as Christian writers, we get to lean into that. So
right.
now, I'm not saying take advantage of somebody by any means. Like, the workers worth their wages is also scripture.
Right.
So we don't want to expect people to do things for us for free. That's not reality either. So let's talk about publishing rights for a minute, because I know that that's a concern for a lot of people. And I can talk about the hybrid side, but let's talk about traditional first. How does the rights work with traditional publishers? Because I know you've done both.
Okay. So this is why you would want an agent if you were with a big publishing house. Most small houses that I work with, their contracts were really understandable. Like even I could understand them. Usually what you're selling them is first American rights. And so that means you are maintaining foreign rights. So if you want to publish in the UK or Australia or someplace else that has English speaking, so you don't have to worry about translations, you would keep those rights. So you would be able to do that. And they are based on what type of print. So most of them buy your ebook and print, paperback and hardback rights.
Audiobooks are separate.
Right. Most of the time. Some of the time that's not
With a
specified.
small press. Okay.
Right. And you would want to specify that if you want to do your audiobook. So that's one thing to just make sure that it's clear that they have stated clearly what formats, that's, print, audio, ebook, that they are going to take first American rights for.
Now, I want to talk about rights for a second, just to clarify. We're talking about publishing rights.
Yes.
This is the right to publish and print your book.
Yes.
Like, we're not talking about, your right to free speech. We're talking about the publishing rights of your manuscript.
Right.
So I want to be clear.
Right. You maintain the copyright.
Correct.
Okay, because you own that. That's your property. But they're buying just the right to publish it in these formats, whatever you agree to give them the rights.
So with hybrid, it's very similar. And I want to be really clear, we're not giving you any legal advice. Sharon and I are not lawyers.
Nope.
We are not in any way, we're just sharing our experiences and what we learned. So take it for what it is. I know when I chose my publishing house for hybrid, there was a lot of negative feedback from people. And as I'm reading through all the critiques of this company and all the things people hated, what was apparent to me was they didn't read their contract. They thought they were getting something different than what they were getting. And if you actually read the contract and make sure you understand it, it helps. It helps you from making a mistake. And if you don't understand it, then I would definitely talk with an attorney or someone who can help you navigate that. The way it worked for my contract with my publisher is they have the publishing rights. I do not, which means that I cannot send out free copies of my ebook to people because that's not my right anymore as long as I'm under contract with them. Now, my contract also allows for me or them to end the contract at any time for any reason, in which case the rights would return to me and I can, I could go self-publish if I wanted to. What I don't have the rights to when I do that, because I had the package I got with them included interior and cover design, I don't get to keep the rights to that. So I would have to reformat the entire interior of my book and redesign the cover. The image is mine. I commissioned the artwork, so I have that image, but the font, the layout, the look of the book that they did, I can't duplicate. So my book would have to be a second edition. It would look different. Like I said, I could keep the artwork, but the other stuff would look different. So how does that work because I know you took some of your books from traditional to self-published, didn't you?
Yes.
So how did that process work?
Yes, I had to pay the covers and get new cover designs. One thing I'm thinking about specifically, actually both of them that were Sweet Promise Press published before. So that's Mimi and the Banker and The Unexpected Homecoming. Both of them, the titling was according to her series. And so she did not allow me to use that titling. So if you look at the cover of Mimi and the Banker and you saw the Mommy Loves the Banker, that's the original thing, the cover is the same because I hired the designer who did that, except for the title's different. Okay. And the publisher told me that was fine. If I used their cover designer and paid her to do it, whatever, that I could do that, but I had to change the titling because that was connected to the series that they owned the rights to. And it was the same for the Unexpected Homecoming. So that was before Love's Texas Homecoming. So, and the Loves is part of of
their branding.
Yes, that was her titling. All of the books started with Loves something.
Okay.
And so I was not allowed to use that titling because that was hers that she used.
Was it a difficult process for you to get back the publishing rights? Or was it just like?
Sadly, no. All my contracts ended early. One, because the publishers closed their doors. In the case of Sweet Promise Press, because that's still a press, the owner sold the company to someone else. And the series that I wrote in were her series. And she took all the rights to her series with her.
Okay.
So she gave all of them back to anyone who published within her series, which was me. So I ended up getting all my rights back early, like a year and a half, 2 years early. So suddenly I'm not making money with these books. And most of them went unpublished because I did have 7 titles published with her.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I've only republished 2. So,
well, and that's a good possible pitfall with a small press, because that can happen. It's less likely with the larger presses. So that's good to be mindful of too, that business happens.
yes.
And it's a business.
So the thing is, she didn't have to ask permission. The contract is kind of spells that out. Like I would have to ask permission in writing if I wanted my rights back early, but she could end the contact and give rights back at any time for any reason without an explanation.
Which is similar to the hybrid, that kind of, except that either one of us can do it for any time and any reason. But I think it has to be in writing on both parts. So I'd have to go back and look at my contract. But okay, so with self-publishing, just this will be a quick touch on, everything's yours. You don't have to worry about any of that. The title's yours, the art's yours, the design is yours, all of those things. The only thing I would say or caution you on with that is if you have artwork commissioned or someone does your interior design, make sure that transfers to you, that they're not retaining the rights on those things and limiting you and what you can do with them. A simple contract might help with that too. If you're, my best friend's an artist, so I love that. She does all my cover art. But if you're not sure, or it's a newer relationship, make sure you just have something in writing that says they're giving you the publishing and copyright to that artwork, and that they're not going to use it with another writer, because you don't want that either down the road. So, okay, let's talk royalties. Because, when you write a book and you want to make money off of it, that's important. So you mentioned earlier advances. I would like for you, because I think when we're new to this, we don't always know what that means. We just think that we get a big check up front. So explain to us what advances are and how it's different than royalties and how it all works.
Okay. So an advance is really an advance against royalties. That's exactly what it's called in your contract.
Okay.
So when people go, oh, I got an advance. Well, it's an advance against royalties, meaning that if they pay you $10,000, which is a fairly standard one for a debut author, you need to sell enough books to earn them that $10,000 back before you will get any more royalties from the publisher. Okay. So this is a big house thing. All the small houses I worked with were royalties only. They did not do advances, and they will tell you that right on their page when you submit. We don't give advances. We don't pay advances. It's a royalties only contract. So you don't have to worry about earning back your advance. So what happens if you don't earn back your advance, Sharon? They're not going to want to publish your next book.
So you're going to owe them
money.
You're not going to have to write a refund check.
Usually they don't ask for money back. I mean,
Okay.
make sure the contract says that. That's why you have an agent, because they'll make sure to cover, because they don't want to pay back theirs either. Because remember, they're earning money out of what you earn. So they don't want to have to pay theirs back. So they'll make sure that you get covered in that. But yes, it's just going to hurt you if you don't sell enough books to cover that advance.
Yeah. Okay. So, and also keep in mind too, like if it takes you 5 years to sell enough books to make that back, it's going to be 5 years till you see another check from them. Like this is not going to be, whereas when you do small press, hybrid, self-publishing, the first books that sell, you start seeing royalties right away. Well, not right away. We'll talk about that. So, I'll say this about hybrid. The royalty is definitely less. Because you're splitting it with the publisher. So, and this is where people refer to them a lot of times as being scams. It's not a scam because they're telling you what they're doing. You're agreeing to it. It's a contract. A scam is when they lie to you and take your money and they don't give you what they promised to give you. So it's not really a scam. It's just bad business in some sense. So, for me, I paid them X amount of dollars for my package, and then my royalty is right around 10% per book. And I'll be candid about that. I don't mind sharing that. That means they're probably getting closer to 25, 30% of my book because there's the wholesale price and the retail price. So because you're sharing that with them, it's definitely a lower cut. With small presses or some smaller hybrid type companies, you'll see a higher royalty amount and they'll take less, but generally they do less work. It's been what I've observed with other writers and things that I've seen. I did not have to worry about anything once I submitted my manuscript. I just proofread and did the stuff, and I didn't really have to worry a whole lot about those things. And they did a lot more work, so they took a bigger cut. I knew that going in. It was what I agreed to. I'm fine with it. I have no regrets. But again, if you're looking to make money, that 10% royalty is not going to offset your upfront costs for a long time.
And I will say, with a big traditional publisher, you earn about 7% of the royalty. So even less than what you are earning with the hybrid. Okay. And so when people are saying, oh, this person, it makes as a multi-million-dollar author, Stephen King, James Patterson, okay, Daniel Steele. So that's because they get paid a 6-figure or more advance for every book because they've earned those out. And so they're not afraid. They're not living for that royalties check. They know every book they send, they're going to get this huge advance. And then the royalties checks are just whatever when they come.
And the publisher knows that they're going to make it on the back end through the royalties because they're taking the biggest cut.
Right.
Yep. So, and that's what you need to be mindful of. Like, are you okay with that? If you're okay with that, then pursue traditional publishing. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. Again, we're just talking about the pros and cons and then the things you want to look out for and help you understand what those are with each platform. So self-publishing is, I'm going to say, when it comes to royalties, the most profitable. You decide how much your royalty is going to be based on the price you choose to market your book for. I also, going back to my book for a second, the way my publishing house worked, I didn't set my price. And it was in my contract. They set the price based on page count, which sounded great to me at the time. I had no issues with that. So my list price, my MSRP was $13.95 for my book. And I was totally okay with that, except for one thing. In the last 2 years, the price of printing has gone way up. So books that are comparable to mine are now selling for $17.95 or $16.95, and mine is still $13.95. And I don't get to change that price point because that's my contract. Now my royalty hasn't changed. So they're eating the cost, the printing cost goes up, they're eating the difference, not me, because I'm locked in on my royalty. But I would like to be able to set the price to be a little bit more comparable to what's going on in the market. So with self-publishing, which is what I'm doing with my next book, I'll have the freedom to do that. So I think that's something that worth mentioning too. So there's also, I don't know if you've used this before, Sharon, Amazon has a great calculator tool for figuring out how much money you're going to make on your book. You put in the size of the book, the pages, if it's black and white color, all the things. And then it's like, okay, this is how much money we're going to take from you. What do you want your price to be? And then this is how much you'll get. So it's a really easy to use tool to help you navigate that, and you're not just shooting in the dark. But what would you say about royalties with self-publishing? Anything worth mentioning?
No, except for just remember it's on sold. So you still have to sell books in order to make the money, even though you're making more, you're making all of it. I mean, after you pay your distributor fees. I mean, so that's what you're cutting with Amazon and Smashwords and Drafted Digital or whoever you have distributed.
Ingram, all those, yeah.
Right. So they're going to take their distributor fee. So they're not taking part of the royalties necessarily. They're taking their fee up front, and then you get whatever the royalties are that are left. But you will see when you go into KDP and you price ebooks that they have a 35% and 70% different cut. So, and that's based on your price. If you price your book in 99 cents, you don't get a 70% cut. You can only get a 35% cut. So you have to be above a certain
Dollar
price in order to get 70%. And you can choose not to, but why would you not? I mean, you could choose to price it at $4.99, which is, I think, the margin, and still take 35%. But why would you if they're going to let you take 70?
Yeah, just let them have more. Now, the reason you would, okay, so I did hear this. One of the reasons for doing that on a larger book is if your file is very large, Amazon will charge download fees to you. And that 35%, it leaves the buffer there for those download fees to not affect your royalty or something like that. I haven't done it myself, but that would be like if you're, I mean, if you're doing a graphic novel, if you're doing something that's really visual or video heavy, that's where you're going to see that. You're not going to have that issue with just a general print book for the most part. Okay, so you mentioned marketing in there, and we'll talk about that in a second. The only other thing I wanted to say about royalties is if you're setting your price, whichever path you're on, if you're the one who's setting the price for your book, look at comparables, look at page counts, look at indie authors, not Stephen King, or Danielle Steele or Francine Rivers. Look at comparable indie authors and see what the going rates are for them and what they're charging. And I suggest doing that by looking at people who are like in the top 10 sellers and things like that, because you want to know people who are selling books, not just people who are, like you said, if you don't sell it, it doesn't mean anything. So look at people who are actually selling books on Amazon and doing a good job with selling books, and then look at their price points. And I think that's really important for ebook. I see a lot of indie authors selling their ebooks for 99 cents as the list priced. And it's like, do a special once in a while and stuff, that's fine. But nothing screams indie author to me more than a 99-cent book. Because it's almost like you're underselling the quality of what you do. And it's okay to not charge that. So, okay, marketing. Everybody's favorite part of writing. I have heard this from so many people, and I know the truth, but I'm gonna let Sharon speak to it. A lot of authors I know, people I've worked with, they want to go traditional because the publishing house is going to market the book for them, and they aren't good at that part. Sharon, tell us about that.
Okay. So here's the thing. Yes, if you go with a big house, they have a marketing budget. But remember, now they're spending this budget on every author in their stable who's going to publish. Now, if Stephen King is releasing a book the same time as you, who's going to get more of the marketing budget?
Absolutely
It's
me.
him, right?
Oh, wait, what?
Yeah, it's going to be him because they know he's going to sell the books. So you will have it. The thing that you will have is an experienced publicist, people who know what they're doing for marketing, who can give you a checklist, who can give you ideas about what you need to do. As an author, you are always 100% responsible for marketing your book. Okay. Your publisher sells your book. And because they want sales, that means they do some marketing too. But who wants the book to sell the most? You. If you want sales, you have to do marketing. That's where the two are combined. So there
And
you
I
go. You
think that's
both have to do
important for
marketing no
people to
matter what.
understand, because a lot of people think if I go traditional, they're just going to handle all of it and I don't need to worry about it. And the reality of it is they'll handle some of it. And that's true for hybrid or vanity publishing too. They'll put you in their newsletter. They'll do some marketing for you, even if you, but, and I want to warn you with this. So this would be a pitfall con warning thing for hybrid publishing. Look closely at what the marketing package includes before you invest in it, because they're not going to sell your book for you. That's not what a marketing package does. It means they're going to print you bookmarks. It means they might take it to a couple book fairs across the country with the other 50 books they're bringing who paid to have that done. It's not customized. It's not, no matter what they tell you, they're not going to care about selling your book as much as you do, like Sharon said. So I chose not to buy their marketing package when I did hybrid, because I looked at it and I was like, this is not going to sell my book. This is me just wasting money. I'd rather spend it on ads than on this. So be mindful of that. Look at it really carefully. They're going to provide you with tools, checklists, things like Sharon talked about, maybe even some resources, but it's your job to sell the book, even with hybrid publishing. Self-publishing, obviously that's self-selling.
All on you. But you can hire a publicist too. You can
True.
hire someone who is expert in Amazon ads, to run those ads for you, or Facebook ads, or whatever type of advertising you want to do. But that is you putting out money to hire them. And there's a cost per click, ad spend that Amazon is also going to charge you, or Facebook, or whoever you're advertising. So if you're hiring someone to do it for you, that means you're going to have to sell a lot more to recoup, to get a return on investment.
And to clarify
ROI.
what that means, that click to spend, that means that every time someone clicks on the ad link, Amazon's charging you, or Facebook is charging you, or whoever. They're charging you on the click, not the sale. And it can be, and this is my background, I did marketing and communications. If you don't know what you're doing and you don't do it correctly, basically what happens is the sponsored ads show up first. So let's say your grandma's going on to buy your book because she loves you. She does a Google search because she doesn't use the Amazon. So she Google searches your name and your book pops up with that sponsored ad, and grandma clicks on it. You just paid for grandma to buy your book. So you have people who are actually looking for you and end up clicking on those ads. And so you want to really know what you're doing so that you're not wasting that money. And it's a really delicate balance to figure out how to market and have those sponsored ads show up to people who aren't already wanting to buy your book. It's very strategic and intentional. So just be aware of that. Okay, last thing I want to talk about, I know we're a little bit over today, but the process. How long does it take to traditionally publish from start to finish?
Okay.
Not start to finish. You have to write the manuscript first. Once you submit it, from there to the end.
It's usually, for a big house, 18 months to 3 years. For a smaller press, it might be within 12 months. It just depends on how many books they publish, how many they've read. Most of them all still have we only publish X amount of books per year. And when you sign on, if they already have the X amount for the next year, then you're going to have to wait till the year after. So still, you're talking a year or more for traditional.
Well, and let's circle back, because if you're going the agent route, that adds another, how long does it take for an agent to find you a publishing house?
Right.
So that's going to extend that timeline, because that's once you have the contract, it's going to
with
take
them.
18 months to 3 years. But then you have the time before that where the agent's actually querying and doing other legwork for you. So that'll extend it somewhat. Hybrid, you have very little control over the timeline. When I say very little, I mean virtually none. It does depend a little bit on how perfect you want it. Authors I've worked with who have used hybrid publishing get to a point where they're just frustrated and they sign off because they don't want to look at it one more time. I don't recommend that. Be patient. Don't rush the process. So how many times do you want to go back and forth with corrections? How many times do you want to, go back and forth on the cover? It's not exactly what you want. Well, they're not going to get it back to you tomorrow. It's going to take weeks. Every time you send them something to change, it's weeks. And then you have to go over the new version and you have to go through it and that takes time. And then you send it back and then it's weeks till they make the changes. And it's a long process. Now with that said, it's not as long as traditional. I submitted my manuscript in, I believe it was the end of March, and my book went live the beginning of August. So it's not, if you have the time, but if you're working full time and you're, babysitting your grandkids in the evenings and things like that, however long I flipped it back. I got it from them within 2 days. I had it back to them because I wanted it to keep moving. If you don't have the margin in your life to do that, then it's going to make it take longer. So the other thing I didn't love about it was I had no control over my release date, and neither did they, because they're just uploading it to Amazon and waiting for Amazon to do what they do. And it actually went live before my publisher told me it was live. I happened to go on and look for it and I found it and I was like, oh, it's there. Surprise, it's out. So that was a little disappointing because I didn't get the big bang moment I wanted. I pivoted, but yeah. So that's something to be mindful of too, is you don't have a lot of control over the timeline or the releasing. Self-publishing is a little similar with the release, I think, but tell us about self-publishing. How does that work with the process?
Well, I mean, authors who have that team with them, I know some six-figure authors who do novellas, okay, and they will release one a month. So that's 12 novellas a year that they are publishing. And they're always working on 2 or 3 at a time, but it's at a different stage. Okay, I'm drafting one and I'm, editing another and I'm in the final proof stage of another. So, but when you have a team, that's different than I'm the one-man show. You have to learn what you can do, what your margin is for that, the things you can do and how long it's going to take you. And I say, if you want to figure it out, over plan. Give yourself twice as long to do stuff as what you think it's going to take, because then you won't have your release date creeping up on you and you're going, but I'm not ready. I still haven't, whatever. X,
And then you're
Y.
rushing to put it out at
Right.
a lesser quality than what you want.
Right. And you
Yeah.
don't want that. You want it to be your best thing that hits the market. So I ran into my last release. I ran into some problems for my formatter. Her grandmother passed away, right? Like 2 days before I was sending my book to her to format. And she's like, I am so sorry, Sharon. I'm not going to be able to. And I'm like, I am so understanding, Nancy, be with your family. So, but then I was like, okay, but my release date is here 6 weeks from now, and I don't have a formatter. So what's plan B? So, you always have to kind of build that unexpected into your timeline for, I know a lot of indie authors who put their release date like 6 weeks, a month, 2 months past when they figure it's going to be done. And then they're like, oh, and by the way, I'm releasing early. And then their
Under
fans are all
promise and over
excited
deliver,
because,
right?
right, they're all excited because they're releasing early. And really, they're just like, no, everything went according to plan, so I can release when it really should release. So, because yes, you have to wait for Amazon to do their checks. They'll tell you 72 hours. I have never had them take 72 hours, but they say that. So you should make sure you plan that much in there.
And I'll be honest, in some of the writing groups I'm in, I've seen people who have said, I've been waiting for 2 weeks for Amazon to get back to me. And they're like, what do I do? They're not. So I'm sure it depends on their workload and their inundation, because I'm going to get this number wrong. I believe it's 5,000 new manuscripts published daily through Amazon KDP. I believe it's right around 5,000 every day.
I
So
believe that.
if they're getting 50,000 this week instead of, 35, yeah, you're going to sit there for a minute. So, yeah, so just be mindful of that. I think that's good. And I just like anything as a Christian, hold it loosely. Trust that God is sovereign. And if there's delays, that those are due to the people he wants to read your book aren't ready for it yet. Or, just trust that he's bigger, because it can be very discouraging and frustrating when you're trying to figure it all out. And especially type A personalities who want this, and this. There's going to be things that go wrong. I will say this too, though, as far as length, when you're looking at contractors, if you're self-publishing and you're hiring an editor, you're hiring a cover designer and those kinds of things, make sure that you talk with them about what their timeline is, because that will help you to get a realistic idea of, and then include buffer for back and forth if changes need to be made and things like that. So make sure you're asking those questions as you're interviewing and having those consultation calls with people to know. Some editors might be like, yeah, I'll take your book. And then it's like, oh, I've got clients right now. I can't start on it for 3 months. Wait, you didn't tell me that part. So ask, make sure you ask what the timeline is and the turnaround. So, okay. That was everything we had. It was a good conversation. Thank you, Sharon, so much for being here.